All right, looks like we are live on Facebook. Thank you everyone for joining. I've asked all of you to join me in this conversation because you all have very unique approaches and strategies when it comes to your libertarian activism. I'm really looking forward to the conversation and knowledge that comes from this. So the way that this conversation is going to play out is we're going to have 2-minute introductions, and I have a randomizer. It is from random.org, and it's really cool for anyone else looking to put on debates or anything like this, because you can put the names in and then hit randomize. So I'll go ahead and start with the randomizer. You have 2-minute instructions and then 1 to 2 minutes to answer follow-up questions, and then we're going to take some questions from libertarians in Washington. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the randomizer. You know, there's a little background there's a little feedback coming from someone. Let's see, where's my randomizer? Okay, so we're going to start 2-minute introductions with Sam Robb. Go ahead, Sam.
Fantastic. Hi, my name is Sam Robb. I am just some guy from Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I'm concerned with the way the country is going. I think a lot of people are, especially with this latest crisis. You see a lot of people who are kind of waking up to the idea that the government is not what they really expected and not doing what they thought it would do in a crisis like this, and is not taking the country in a direction that they want to go in. So I think this is a wonderful time, unfortunately, for the Libertarian Party to step up and be the adults in the room. We have the opportunity to speak to America at large, to show them where the Democrats and the Republicans have failed to take care of the American people, where they have failed to provide the guidance and the information needed in order to make good, solid, rational decisions. And this is a fantastic opportunity for us to be able to reach out and to communicate libertarian ideals to people who are being told, stay home, don't go to work, rely on the government to take care of you. All things that go against the grain for a lot of Americans. So I'm here to talk to you today and give you an idea of where I am and give you an idea of what I would like to do in a situation like this, and give you some solid policy ideas and some concrete steps that we can take as libertarians to reach our fellow Americans and to win the White House. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Rob. Next up is Mark Whitney.
Thanks, Pickens. I should mention that I own random.org, and that is that's not. I just have to acknowledge the elephant in the room, that this debate is being moderated by my campaign manager, the lovely and talented C. Michael Pickens. So if you hear questions asked of my opponents, why is Mark awesome? Why should Mark be the nominee? Why would Mark make a good president? Well, you know why. So I concede defeat in this debate before I even start, because I think it's impossible to win a debate that's being moderated by your campaign manager. That said, I'm going to try. My name is Mark Whitney. I am CEO of the LawNet Corporation. I'm down here in San Diego, which is a great place to be. Even if you have to have a virus, it's not bad. For those of you who are wondering, the current Mrs. Whitney and I are doing fine. We've been together since 1981, which is to say, we haven't been within 6 feet of each other for years, so no big change for us. And we've been running hard. I've been calling delegates, been doing a lot of these debates. Those of you who have not seen one of these digital debates, from my point of view, it's a big step up from the 3-dimensional state conventions we've been having, because you actually get to know the candidates, I think, a lot better. I think you'll get some insight to myself and my fellow candidates here today. And I'm looking forward, Washington, to a great afternoon. Thanks for inviting me.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. Next up, Daniel Behrman.
Hey, so I'm Dan Taxation Steph Behrman. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California. I got to Texas as quick as I could, and I identify as a Texan. And of course, I'm running for president of the United States from down here in Mexico. And I have to say, the American dream is alive and well down here in Mexico. And this is actually, this is really a very unique time. A lot of things are collapsing. Everybody thought we had this amazing, strong, booming economy. And now when we have to shut everything down, we realize that it was actually built on a very shaky foundation. And this actually gives us a very interesting opportunity to show the American people, all of them, Democrats and Republicans, that we didn't have the great economy that we thought we had, and we should. This means every person should own a home. Every person should be able to survive for months or years if they lose their job for whatever reason, whether they get in a car accident, they get sick, or there's some global catastrophe or natural disaster like this. This is a great opportunity for us to show those people this. And of course, we don't have to go the commie route. We don't have to give away freebies. We don't have to pay for all of it. All we have to do is get the government out of the way, and people will be able to get the things that they want, and we'll be able to have a solid foundation for a stable economy. And that's what I want to fight for, and that's what this campaign has been doing. So I hope to tell you a lot more about that.
Thank you, Dan. Adam Kokesh.
All right. Thank you so much for putting this together, Michael. I am coming to y'all today from the Garden of Freedom in northern Arizona, and I want to take this opportunity from our No Force One studios to show you where we are parked today at this beautiful homestead that we're setting up here, where we've got all sorts of geodesic domes and off-grid houses. We've got my crew working there on organizing our shipping container, setting up a dome building business here. And while I am still, of course, running for the Libertarian Party nomination for president, I am more than ever committed to the platform of localization, the everybody gets what they want strategy. And especially right now when we see what's happening with a real but relatively minor health crisis being drummed up into a global catastrophe that requires the governments to take on an incredible amount of power and rip everybody off. It's insane. If we're facing a health crisis, why are they spending hundreds of millions of dollars on all these pork barrel projects? You look at the $2 trillion stimulus bill, most of it is for nonsense pork from government, for agencies, for handouts, for big businesses. It's a ripoff. And we're seeing what the two parties are really all about, the two old parties, where, hey, kick them when they're down, break their leg, give them a crutch, say if it wasn't for government, you wouldn't be able to walk. And with the response to this being mostly handled on a local level, some places for better, some places for worse, we're seeing that communities should be able to respond in ways that are best for themselves, not this centralized one size fits nobody but the people pulling the strings solution that we have right now. And with Trump saying we're going to take charge of businesses here and there, we're going to be buying stock, we're going to be changing ownership, the fascism is laid bare. The Democrats are going along with this. We need to step up and provide a real meaningful alternative. So I'm really excited to be running this year and to be part of a great team of Libertarian Party presidential candidates.
Awesome. Thank you, Adam. First question, and then I'm going to hit the randomizer. Washington State was one of the first states affected by coronavirus. What would you do as president or not do as president to slow the spread of infectious diseases like what we are experiencing with the coronavirus? And I hit the randomizer, and Adam, looks like you are first, followed by Sam, then Daniel, then Mark.
Well, in summary, what would a libertarian response look like to the coronavirus as opposed to what we're seeing from the Democrats and Republicans? Pretty much the same, but without all the crappy stuff. You know, we see as a species, as a human family, we are capable of taking care of each other. We're capable of sharing information. We're capable of making decisions. We're capable of reallocating resources to meet new needs as they crop up. Government has done almost nothing but make this worse. There are a few places like activation of military medical resources, that those being put to meet human needs. That's a good thing. But by and large, what do we see government doing? Restricting your rights, coming up with more monetary ripoffs, the merging of the Department of the Treasury and the Federal Reserve System. Now we see this huge power grab where they're basically kicking us while we're down, making it worse. The big things that I see as problems that wouldn't be happening with libertarian policy, you wouldn't have secrecy. Donald Trump ordering the CDC to do their deliberations in private. You wouldn't have the Chinese government hiding information from the rest of the world. And if anything, we see that is being laid bare. The hazard that a big communist regime represents to the rest of the world. You wouldn't have the shortages of supplies. You wouldn't have stay-at-home orders that make it harder for us to take care of people who really need it. And what we have is this opportunity where we see, the market, people acting peacefully, coming together, can do everything better than the violent, coercive central response that we're getting from governments all over the world right now.
Thank you, Adam. Next up is Sam Robb. Sam, you're muted.
There we go.
There you
Thank
go.
you. I'm glad I asked the question. Could you please repeat the question?
Fantastic. Yeah, so Washington State was one of the first states affected by coronavirus. What would you do as president or not do as president to slow the spread of infectious diseases like what we're experiencing now?
Okay, first thing I would do would be stop shaking hands. That's something that I could do directly as president. Actually, if you take a look at things right now, you see that a lot of the response is being handled at the state and local level. That's because right now what we have in the United States is a conglomeration of different local and state health agencies working and trying to get guidance from the CDC. Part of the problem that we have is that the CDC has not been entirely forthcoming. The administration has not been very clear on their guidance. So one of the first things that I would have done as president would have been to say, I'm glad that I've been president for the last 3 years. I've worked to dismantle the FDA. I've worked to eliminate regulations preventing people from working as medical professionals across state lines. I would have worked with various governors and tried to convince them that medical licensing would need to be loosened, and we need to get rid of those restrictions, allow more doctors, more nurses to be in practice. Exactly what New York City, New York is doing right now, where they are going out and saying, hey, you used to be a nurse, you used to be a medical practitioner of some sort, you retired, we don't care how long ago it was, we'd like to activate you again. If they can call up someone that retired 20 years ago and say, hey, yeah, we're confident that you can come into a hospital and help treat people, then the whole idea of licensing people to do that is ridiculous. So we would have spent 3 years getting rid of a lot of the impediments that we had to deal with, that we had to remove piece by piece in order to start dealing with the coronavirus. The other big thing I would have done is I would have not allowed, as was mentioned, the CDC to put the brakes on situations like development of vaccines, the development of treatments, development of tests. One of the things that's really bogged us down is that the FDA said, yeah, the administration said the CDC is going to be developing the tests. All the rest of you stand down. I'm very glad that was all they did, because if you pay attention, you notice that the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, which is my hometown, very proud of this, the first reported case of coronavirus in the United States was January 21st. On January 21st, they started working on a vaccine. 10 weeks later, they've got one, and the government is now saying, whoa, hold on. We need to take some time and make sure that this is ready to go. So a year to 18 months is typical. They may be able to expedite that, but in truth, it really should be a lot faster process than going through government bureaucracies to make sure that this is ready for the people.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. Dan, taxation is theft.
So there's a few different things to look at here. What is the government's plan? We hear this, there's this curve that they want to flatten, right? And the idea behind that is their assumption is that this virus is here and it's here to stay, and it's going to infect millions of people, hundreds of millions of people, probably everybody. And what they want to do is they want to keep us indoors to slow down the spread so that as more people get it, we don't overcrowd the hospitals. Here's the problem. That line, when you see this curve that they want to flatten, there's a line going across it, and that is the capacity of our healthcare system. Why, instead of trying to lower this curve, why don't they raise that line? And it's so easy to do. There are doctors here from other countries that are able to practice. They're fully qualified, but they're not able to get certified because the government restricts the absolute number of doctors who can be certified every year. We have pharmaceuticals that we can't import from other countries, or there's no competition here. We have the FDA that's limiting access to face masks and respirators and everything else. There's so many things that the government is doing to prevent access to healthcare, and all their only solution to it is let's lock people in their homes like prisoners, and we'll slow down the rate that people are going to transfer this. Instead of saying this is how you can protect yourself, as they have, washing your hands, wearing a mask, taking all these safety precautions, which everybody can do to stop the spread, but allowing the healthcare industry to actually thrive in a fair market so that everybody has access to the healthcare that they need. This is absolutely what needs to happen, because the truth is, where this virus came from and where it's going, there's a very good chance that it's going to be here to stay. If they let up on this lockdown in 2 months from now, there are a lot of people who are just going to be recently infected because they went out during the lockdown, and it's going to start all over again. So we have to take that into consideration. But we also have to understand that this is not a virus that's going to kill everybody. They're overinflating the numbers. They're trying to create hysteria so that they can pass all these new bills. We've already seen the bailouts that they're trying to do. And they're doing this in the face of the hysteria because we're so distracted looking at the virus. This thing is not as bad as they say it is. It is bad, absolutely. And there are certainly things we can do to slow it down and prevent it. But we have to understand that this is the nature of the real world. The other thing we need to look to is we need to understand that this economy is forcing people to get out of their homes, because nobody owns property, nobody owns land, because even if you own it, you've got a 30-year mortgage thanks to the FHA instead of having your home paid off in 5 years. You've got a lifetime of debt, and you have to continue to pay property tax forever. The government is going to continuously try to take your land from you unless you continuously give them money, which means you have to go out of your house and get a job, which puts you at risk with the virus. If you get rid of all these taxes and we allow people, we create a way by getting rid of government programs that people can own their own homes and their property and not be dependent on the economy just to survive, we will have a much more successful time at beating this virus.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. Next up, Mark Whitney.
So I think the office of the president is an infectious disease. It has been an infectious disease for a long time. As a chief executive for 20 years, if I was the chief executive of the United States or the chief executive, say, of Washington, the governor of Washington, the first thing I would do is be honest with people. I would say, look, I don't have the authority to close your business. I don't have the authority to make you stay home, which is true. None of these chief executives possess that authority. It is all extra constitutional. Our platform says, this party says, the Constitution shall not be suspended, even in wartime. So I would be honest with the people. I'd say, look, I don't have the authority to make you do anything. But I've got some doctors and scientists here that say this is a real issue. I would not order businesses to close because I don't have the authority to do it. I might suggest that it was smart to close. And I would say, if you close, the government waives your obligation to comply with any of the rules or statutes or municipal codes or ordinances that you are accustomed to complying with when you're open and you can generate revenue. So I think there are also multiple truths at play. I think we live in a country where the Democrat and Republican national committees have rigged the game. They know the outcomes of elections before the elections are held. They know it with surety. And they do not want this because this introduces variables that they can't control, and they're going to be judged politically by this. I think that is one multiple truth. I also think there are incredible opportunities for our party, which is a very entrepreneurial party. It's a party that's rooted in try and try again. We libertarians are watching. We are keeping track. We are making a list of laws that have been suspended, which is an admission on the part of officialdom that those laws weren't needed in the first place. Here in San Diego, cops are giving people ordinances where they used to just normally slap the cuffs on, throw them in the back of the paddy wagon, haul them off to jail pending cash bail. Those laws are also being waived. So we have authoritarian laws that are being waived by government. We libertarians are keeping track of those laws. And on the flip side of this, I see tremendous opportunity. But this virus is going to permanently change the United States for good and for ill. We're going to see unemployment of 35%. We're going to see bankruptcies like we've never seen before. The opportunities for this party, the opportunities for individuals who are entrepreneurial minded and are seeking out opportunities right now are going to be incredible on the flip side of this so-called new normal. So I'm someone that looks at the multiple truths of this situation, and I've done my best to articulate those here.
Awesome. Thank you very much, all of you. Next question. Let's keep the answers of this question down to 30 seconds. Obviously, we're live in the Libertarian Party of Washington State group, but this could be applicable to anyone in state or county leadership within the Libertarian Party. What would be your recommendation to state Libertarian Party leadership in this situation? And we're going to go ahead and start with Mark Whitney.
My recommendation
then Adam, then Daniel, then Sam.
Okay, my recommendation to Libertarian State Party chairs is to carry on business as normally as possible. If your collective in your state decides that three-dimensional analog conventions in hotels are not a good idea and not doable, and your bylaws say you can't do it any other way, get together and amend the bylaws. We are seeing here in our presidential campaign the opportunity that this virus presents. Every one of these candidates, every one of my fellow candidates running for president here, I've debated many of them one-on-one. People who are libertarians who host podcasts have stepped up to host debates, and I've probably gone over 30 seconds, so I'll shut up. Go ahead.
All right, next up, Adam Kokesh.
Yeah, I echo that sentiment in general. Don't be afraid. Don't be scared by the nonsense, by the hype. If there are people who are afraid, and this is a really important thing to say. I'm not saying that this is a non-existent phenomenon. This is a real thing that's being overhyped, and it's not a problem to say, one, that people should not be afraid, and also compassionately realize that a lot of people are afraid, that a lot of the statistics have been blown out of proportion, even the threat to old people and immunocompromised. For whatever real threat there is there, we should be as accommodating as possible. We have the technology. It's not hard to meet in person for people who want to meet in person. If they feel like they need to wear gloves and masks, don't make them feel bad about it. Make them feel welcome and normal, practicing whatever physical distancing is appropriate. I know Michael's pretty paranoid up there in Washington State. That's okay. But then we should be taking this again as the opportunity to say, look, we have the technology. Let's really maximize the potential here and maximize engagement. And it's not just, oh, now there are old people and immunocompromised people who are vulnerable. There always have been people who are mobility limited for whatever reason who might participate more if we provided better mechanisms.
Cool. Daniel, Taxation Seth Behrman.
Yeah, so I think the most important thing we can do is not be afraid and be brave. We have to show the rest of the world and the rest of the country and all of this country's constituents that there is a way to move forward, and we need to educate them on what the government is doing. We don't need to cause hysteria. We don't need to create conspiracy theories and get everyone scared of what the government is doing. We need to educate and inform them, because ultimately the government that we have is the result of what people want. And if people are afraid and they want more government to come in and save them, that's what we're going to get. And we need to change that mindset across the entire country.
Awesome. Thank you. And Sam Robb.
Okay. Be visible, be reassuring, and be active. Get out there and talk to people. You've got the Democrats telling you that you should hate Trump. You've got the Republicans telling you that Democrats are trying to destroy the country. You should be the libertarians out there telling people, hey, this is going to be a bad situation, but if we stick together, we can make it work. If we work together, we can get through this. See what you can do in your local communities, or help organize food banks, help organize relief efforts. See what you can do at the state level to get the message out. Hey, we are the libertarians. This is what we're doing. We're asking people to stay home. We're asking people to take care of the those who are immunocompromised, those who may need assistance, those who may need some help getting through this. We would need to step up and let people see that while there are people trying to raise panic on the left, trying to raise panic on the right, trying to jam through all sorts of things that aren't related to this, that the Libertarian Party is the ones who are willing to step out, take care of people, and to help get things done instead of talking about what's wrong with everybody else.
Awesome. Thank you. So next question I'm pulling from the Libertarian Party of Washington group. Whose responsibility is it to defend natural rights against unjust laws? And clicking on the randomizer, and we're starting with you, Daniel, Taxation Seth Behrman.
How much time do I have on this one?
Minute, 2 minutes.
All right. So to defend natural rights against the government, that's us. There's, the Constitution was written with certain rights. And then, of course, the 9th Amendment, which says there are a lot more that aren't even listed. That's a law. But who's going to enforce that law? There's not a branch of the government that's designed to specifically ensure that every single other branch of the government is sticking within the bounds of the Constitution. That is our job. It is literally our job. We are the enforcers of the law, because think about it. If the government was created by we the people for the people, then we the people are its masters. We are the sovereigns. The government is a republic, which literally means a public thing. It is our thing, and is our responsibility as that government being our thing. It is our responsibility that we ensure that that thing stays within the bounds of its constitutional obligations and respects the natural rights of all individuals. We have to be the law enforcers. The government does not own us. We are not government property. The government is our property, and it is our responsibility to enforce that law.
Awesome. Thank you. Next up is Mark Whitney.
So our platform, the Libertarian Party platform, is the most establishment platform in all of politics. It is not a radical document. It is an establishment document. It stands for the precept that all authority comes from the people, all rights are natural, and it embraces this platform 100%. These two platforms go really well together. And so I am running for president to return authority to the highest office in the land, which is the office of citizen. We, the people, can have whatever government we decide to have. I've been running a campaign based on courage, based on activism. I have challenged the libertarians wherever I've spoken to embrace the idea of a constitutional convention. It is the job of the president to secure your rights as set forth in the Constitution. The example that I've given several times is that if you, Michael Pickens, are the only citizen in this country who wants to have a house full of guns, and all 300 of your fellow citizens oppose you, the Second Amendment commands me to defend you, Michael Pickens. The Article 5 of the Constitution provides 4 ways to amend the Constitution. You realize we could have a constitutional convention and even amend the way we amend the Constitution. When I talk about this to libertarians, about the idea of a constitutional convention, one of the things that makes me want to talk about this is to preserve what we're doing right here. We're not just running for office, we are also citizen activists and citizen journalists. We all wear that hat in our private lives. And I want to preserve that. But right now, the right to be a citizen journalist is in jeopardy on platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Google. People who do not have political opinions that comport with Rachel Maddow and Sean Hannity are being censored. We need to secure ourselves from European judicial opinions that control our speech. So there are many reasons we need to have a constitutional convention. It should happen, to my mind, every 10 years. And I'm going to keep talking about this because I think it's super important. And I'm going to keep challenging libertarians to embrace that so that we can remedy so many of the things that we complain of, such as the 16th Amendment, which makes IRS possible. And I'll end it there, Michael.
Thank you. Next up is Adam Kokesh.
Well, of course, I would say, like Dan did, that it's everybody's responsibility to stand up for each other. When you talk about defending natural rights, I think it can be reframed as preventing people from doing unethical things, or holding people accountable for doing unethical things, or committing crimes, creating injustice. I like the way that Martin Luther King Jr. put it: an injustice anywhere is an affront to justice everywhere. And in that sense, we all live in a less vibrant world anytime there's a violation of somebody else's rights. And I mean this just in a purely capitalist sense. Even if you think of capitalism, an ownership system based on, or an economic system based on ownership of the means of production, namely the individual human being, the individual human mind, self-ownership. There's this great ideal of what humanity is capable of in a state of perfect harmony, when there are nothing but non-violent, non-coercive relationships that are win-win, as opposed to win-lose when you have a coercive relationship or an injustice. We all have an opportunity, all of us who see this, to put these ideas into action and make the world a better place. And we can't get caught up and say, well, it's just government. Yes, government is the greatest source of injustice in the world, but to see it as a bigger part of what it means to be part of the human family, to say we want everybody to have their rights respected. We want self-ownership to be the norm all over the world. That's what we have to offer. And I think that perspective to say, look, this is a way of looking at injustice. It's not just we're defending rights, we're standing up to government. It's really making the world a better place for everybody.
Thank you. Next up is Sam Robb.
Absolutely agree that in defense of natural rights, the starting point is the individual. That's exactly where you need to be. We are responsible for, as Dan said, making sure that the government is safeguarding those rights. What we have is a problem, though, because we haven't been doing that. That's very obvious. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in the situation where we're in right now. People have let their ability to challenge the government atrophy. They are weak. They are used to saying, okay, what does the government say? We can see that even in the current crisis, people are not saying, what can I do to help? In a lot of cases, they're saying, what's the government going to do to help? And that's a mindset that we are going to absolutely have to break if we are going to succeed, if we're going to return freedom to this country. We need to start letting people see that they do not need the government's permission. That all these things that that we've talked about here recently, all these laws that have been taken off the books or suspended or put in abeyance for this crisis, we can start showing them, hey, here's where the government said you needed permission to do something, but look, it's obviously not true, because when push comes to shove, they dropped it like a hot potato. How many other things are there in your life where you think the government has the right to tell you what to do, but when you stop and think about it, you realize, no, it's on you to take the responsibility. It's on you to make sure that when you build your house is safe. It's on you to make sure that when you drive your car is safe for the roads. It's on you to make sure that your business is taking care of your employees and taking care of your customers. We need to get back to that idea that responsibility lies with the individual. Once you understand that you have that responsibility, you realize that with that responsibility comes the authority from yourself to enforce your natural rights.
Awesome, thank you. We're over halfway done with this conversation, so I'm going to ask another one of my questions and another question from the audience. And I expect everyone's answer on this question to be different, okay? So the question is, who is your unique target audience and your unique selling proposition? And hitting the randomizer, and we're starting with you, Mark Whitney.
My unique audience is people who have been through tremendous adversity and understand the opportunity and adversity, because that's my story. 30 years ago, I had the opportunity, I mean the word opportunity, to spend some time in several of our nation's federal prisons because I had submitted a false loan application to the bank. And that was a life-changing decision. I entered prison in 1991, libertarian-ish. I emerged 15 months later after having my sentence declared unconstitutional by Justice Breyer, who's now on the Supreme Court. And I got this order for immediate release, and I was called to the lieutenant's office, and his hand was shaking when he called me in. I was called over the PA system. Inmate Whitney, report to the lieutenant's office. And he says to me, I understand you're going home. And I went, that is correct. and the guards escorted me out the door. I was holding a box of family photos and some legal papers. And I walked a mile and a half down the road to the White Deer Motel in White Deer, Pennsylvania. And I said, you're never going to believe this. I just got thrown out of jail. So that was the day I realized I could play at the highest possible level. I went on to beat the Department of Justice a total of 3 times. I talked the IRS down from $1 million to $20,000. I am tough as nails. I'm unflappable. I'm hardwired to want to wake up every day for 4 years, causing a wet spot to form in the pants of Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi. That's how I want to live my life for 4 years. I want to wield the brick bat that presidents have. The authority has been provided to presidents by the people to dig through the archives and threaten to declassify state secrets unless these criminals, these Republicans and Democrats in Congress, play ball. And that's how I'm going to get things done. I'm an executive, I'm transactional, and we got to where we are a little bit at a time. We're going to dig out a little bit at a time. I am an absolutist as a matter of aspiration, but I understand that we need to meet the audience where it is. And the people of this country right now, they don't even want to get rid of TSA. That's our audience, and that's the audience I'm ready to lead.
Thank you. Next up, Daniel Behrman.
So I think it's a fallacy to believe that we should have one audience and go after that audience. What I really believe is the 40% non-voters, we need to get 30% of them. We need to get 30% of the Democrats, and we need to get 30% of the Republicans. That would ideally be what we need to do. There's a great TED Talk you can probably find on YouTube that's about pasta sauce, and it's about this exact same thing with marketing. You look at the Democrats and the Republicans, they're not all the same. Not every Democrat is the same. They have different issues. There are a lot of single issue voters out there. And what we need to do together as a party, if we really want to get a mass movement of people to jump ship from these other parties and join the Libertarian Party, is we need to specifically go after each one of those issues so that all of the single issue voters can understand that libertarianism is good for them. I've been doing that with this campaign. We have gun rights activists, we have Republicans, we have Trump supporters, we have Bernie Sanders supporters, people who want health care, people who can't afford their rent, they're sick of living paycheck to paycheck, business owners who are successful, who have a lot of money. Everybody, we just have a different message for each one of them. And we have to understand there's not one magic message that all of America is going to love that's going to get anybody elected. We need to understand that everybody wants something different, and we have to figure out, how does libertarianism apply to them, and how can it get them what they want? And that's how we win.
Next up is Adam Kokesh.
Well, I appreciate Mark's point about making politicians wet their pants, but I think if I'm the nominee, that's not going to be a problem, because they're all going to be in adult diapers the whole time going, oh crap, we're going to lose our jobs, we're going to lose our jobs. My platform is localization, and we would be getting rid of everybody in Washington, D.C. And I think Dan makes a lot of good points, but he's not correct there in the point that there isn't one message that appeals to everyone. There is. It's localization. And it doesn't matter if you're a conservative or a liberal. I mean, I like the Larry Sharp quote. Libertarian is someone who says you can be as liberal or as conservative as you want, as long as you don't force it on anybody else. Localization, you get government down to the community level where it's transparent, it's accountable, and it's customized to your values, set up to meet your needs. It is literally the everybody gets what they want strategy. If you don't want anybody to be your president, if you want somebody else to be your president, you can secede, you can break off, you can create new communities, you can have the competition, the laboratories of democracies that the founders advised. We can have that competition between geographically separated sovereign government units. We don't have to be united under one government to be united in American values. And I think any platform other than this is giving into the false anti-freedom, unlibertarian premise that we should all be forced into a centralized system and I should be president. No, nonsense. None of us have the right, if we're elected, to say force the other Americans' policy or their choice of the majority on the minority. What we can do instead, what I think is far more libertarian, is to say, hey, live and let live. You want to live that way in your community, you can do that. You want to live that way in yours, you have that right.
Awesome. Sam Robb, up next.
Okay. My target audience is Democrats and Republicans who are unhappy with the current leadership and their current choices. With all due respect to Dan, I would love to get uninterested voters. I would love to get non-voters involved, but in all honesty, what they're saying when they don't vote is, I really don't care. I don't care. It's one thing or another. Do you want me to vote for the blue donkey or the red elephant, or the red donkey or the blue elephant? I don't care. So getting the uninterested, non-voting public out there and out to the polls is going to be difficult. I think that means that we need to focus on those who are active, those who do want to vote, and those who are disgusted with the current state of affairs. You've got people holding their nose this election cycle and saying, yeah, I'm going to be voting for Biden. I realize he can't put two sentences together and thinks that it's 1986, but I'm going to vote for him. Even as I watch him sniff somebody's hair, I'm going to vote, hold my nose, vote for Trump, hope he doesn't grab anybody about anything, and that we can get through this, right? Those people are looking for someone they can vote for. Right now, they're voting against Donald Trump if they're a Democrat. They're voting against Biden if they're Republican. And we need to give them someone that they can vote for. Someone who says, hey, here's what I understand. We've got some problems in this country. We can make concrete steps to make your life better. We can eliminate the income tax for 50% of Americans and 95% of all small businesses without even really causing a dent in how much money we take in from income tax. That's a small step. That's a concrete example that shows people libertarian ideas work and gives us the backing so that we can get them voting for us in 2020. We can get them supporting us in 2024, and that we can get them campaigning for us in 2028 as we raise the libertarian flag atop the smoking rubble that is the remnants of the Democrat and Republican parties.
Thank you. Okay, next question comes from James Apker, who's ran as a Libertarian for State Senate and State House of Representatives. He's asked, how many of you have owned or own a company business? What is it? And have been in government at any level? And I'm going to go ahead and hit the randomizer, and we'll start with Sam Robb.
Okay, I have not owned a business. I have been a principal in several businesses for the last 20 years. I have been a startup developer. So my practice has been to come in and to work with companies that are getting off the ground and to help build them and make them successful. So I do have experience there. My experience in the government is limited to my time in the Navy as a U.S. naval officer. I served on board the USS Wabash AOR-5 out in California. I was responsible for ultimately the lives of several hundred men and several $1 billion worth of equipment in terms of the ship. When I was working as officer at the deck and working as officer of the deck underway. As for other experience, I've got experience with leadership in our church. I've got experience with leadership on the board of directors of the Meckley-Shakley Veteran Center. I've been involved in several other organizations here in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh Geek Night, we ran for about 15 years. That was a bi-monthly gathering of tech professionals, and at the peak we would have 250 to 300 people showing up for a conference and a get-together and a meet and greet. Overall, I think I've got experience in managing people, and I've got experience in dealing with budgets, and I've got experience with getting what I want.
Thank you. Next up is Daniel Behrman.
So I've had several businesses. I've had a video production company in Los Angeles when I was out there. I decided to change careers and get into web development, moved to Texas, and I ran a marketing company there. I got in a lot of disputes with the police, which led me to meet with some lawyers out there, which were my principal clients for the marketing company. And from that, I got a little bit more a taste working with the government or working against the government, not necessarily in the government. I've beaten a lot of cases on my own against the government. And I've actually been able to free myself from the government. So as of right now, I have absolutely no contract with any government except for a passport. That's all I have. I don't have a driver's license. I don't register my cars, that sort of thing. Well, I guess I was coerced into signing some IRS forms with the current job that I have as a software engineer, but that's gonna take care of itself. Other than that, I mean, I've worked with, I mean, I've destroyed some of these government agencies that, you know, they run around convincing us that they are all powerful and all authority to, you know, they have all this authority to do the things that they do. The traffic courts in a lot of states, and the parking citation courts in a lot of states are absolute frauds. These are not real courts. They have no real authority. They call them administrative, and they trick you into thinking that these are real courts and you have rights and you have a right to a jury and a trial and all this other nonsense. But it's not. It's just a way for you to think you're getting justice while they rip you off. And I have a lot of experience in dealing with these types of organizations and actually beating them with that. As far as joining the government, the closest I ever came was in California. It was I had a couple friends who were interested in joining the CHP, which is basically the state highway patrol. The interest there, which was really interesting, was that we could drive around, we get to do crazy stunts in our cars and get in high speed pursuits and do all this other crazy nonsense and be above the law. And that was the interest to a lot of people. So seeing how, you know, a lot of the things we say about the police joining the force for the wrong reason, I've seen that firsthand with young people being lured into that industry. So I've seen this from all sides. I've beaten the government in many different ways, and I've avoided having even to challenge the government. You know, as they say, the average American commits 3 felonies a day. I'm sure I've committed many, which I've never been caught or charged for, because I understand the way the system works and I'm able to properly avoid that. No, I'm not saying I'm a big criminal, but I do enjoy my freedom.
Thank you. Next up, Mark Whitney.
I've never held elected office. I first ran for office as a Libertarian in 1996 in Vermont. For the state legislature, I received 50% more votes in my little county race than the popular presidential candidate Harry Brown received in the entire state. I have served on the executive committees in Vermont, in San Diego, and in California. I'm a life member of the Libertarian Party, the National Party, as well as the State California Party, as is my wife, and oldest son is a life member of the California Party. Youngest son is our oldest son are both registered and members of the party, I should say, both my sons. In terms of businesses, I've been an entrepreneur since full-time entrepreneur since I was 22 years old. I started an advertising agency that lasted for 6 years, which was very successful. I've employed as many as 125 people in one company. I started a chain of Ben & Jerry's stores in New Hampshire in the late 80s, which was very unsuccessful. I had to go off and spend some time in federal prison for a while. Before I won, I ran the law library there, and I ran a racket. I started a small business in prison, working for the mobsters, and mobster mistresses were sending money orders home to my father so my family could survive while I was away. I became a consultant to high-profile criminal defense lawyers after I got out, people like F. Lee Bailey. I've won civil litigation in the millions of dollars, done the legal work that caused that to happen on behalf of several people. I've sued the United States as a citizen to end the participation of U.S. Armed Forces in a foreign civil war. That's pretty entrepreneurial. I owned a comedy club for 4 or 5 years called the San Diego Comedy Co-op, which revolutionized stand-up comedy in San Diego. Today, there are 5 or 6 legit clubs in town. In 1996, I started my first tech company that recruited candidates, if that sounds familiar. It was in the private sector, though, very successful. It revolutionized online recruiting and established some best practices for recruiters nationally. In 1999, I started thelaw.net. I sell the law to lawyers, 40,000 lawyers that subscribe to my software. And my most recent entrepreneurial venture happens to be running for president. And I also wrote and toured many one-person shows around North America. What a lot of these things have in common is that I'm a guy who likes to get on his feet and run his mouth. I enjoy the spotlight. I enjoy the microphone. I enjoy helping persuade people through the libertarian way of thinking, which I did for 15 years in the course of touring and performing my one-man shows. One of our opponents, Jacob Hornberger, has a stellar resume in speaking to audiences, libertarian audiences who already agree with him. My best credential for what I'm doing now is that I've spent the last 15 years talking to Democrats or Republicans and getting them to stand up and cheer after 90 minutes for my libertarian life story.
Thank you. Next up, Adam Kokesh.
Well, I currently own and operate 2 businesses, and I'm starting a third, as I mentioned out here, with the geodesic domes. We're thinking Big Igloo Geodesics. Haven't come up with a name for that one yet officially, but if anybody wants to make a suggestion, I'm certainly open to it. I like the, we're going to make a shop that looks like a big igloo. So Big Igloo Geodesics, right? And I did 2 other businesses in the past. One was importing cannabis from a legal state to an illegal state, something I know Mr. Pickens knows a lot about that. And I think the other business that I could say I've run in the past was similar to Mark's, but due to the statute of limitations, I don't think I can discuss that one just yet. But with Adam versus the Man, that's my main media production business. Most people know about me through my YouTube videos. Before we got seriously shadow banned and demonetized on YouTube, built that channel up, over 70 million views. The Freedom line is my other business based around my book, Freedom. We do merchandise. I get books printed in China and import them from there. So I have a little bit of insight as to the nonsense of this mask shortage right now, because my printer in China is actually offering to sell me protective N95 masks right now to address the shortage in the United States. I think we're going to get them for the national convention. # we are not afraid. If we have to do the national convention with masks on, I think we should do it anyway. As for my personal involvement with government, it's been mostly on the anti-government side, but I have to admit I was in the Marine Corps, if you couldn't tell from the crayons in my teeth. I volunteered to go to Iraq in 2004. I was in Fallujah for the first battle, and that was hugely influential for me. The biggest part of my activism, I think, what I'm most known for is Iraq Veterans Against the War and speaking out while that occupation was still happening, and that is why I'm so passionately anti-militarism, and I think I'm uniquely capable of bringing that message to the veteran community, which is one that the Libertarian Party really could do a much better job of reaching out to, talking about veteran military suicides. But I know everybody's taking this in a little different direction. As long as Mark there is bragging about state party memberships, I am a lifetime member, not just of the National Party, but also 5 state affiliates, because I like the buttons, and I like giving money to the Libertarian Party.
Awesome. Next question comes from Danielle Lynn. She is a former county chair, and her question is, who are your heroes or mentors? And we'll start with Daniel Behrman.
Man, there's so many. Ron Paul, of course. I'm sure I stole that from somebody else. There's, you know, I find a lot of inspiration in music. I always like to point out Bob Marley, who says, "Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our own minds." Martin Luther King has been very inspirational. It's really difficult to say, because I'm really the type of person that when I'm reading books or watching videos and I see ideas, I'm so much more likely to take the ideas and almost forget about like the people involved in them, because, you know, I'm not one to put someone on a pedestal and say, this is an amazing person, all these amazing things they did, because everyone's got skeletons in their closet. But the ideas, these are the most important things, because these ideas are the things that we're going to take, and we're going to combine with other ideas. We're going to take these ideas and they're going to evolve, and we're going to take these forward. And this is ultimately what is going to shape our society. So there are a lot of ideas that I pull from everywhere, but I can't really specifically say any people who, you know, where they come from. Okay.
Next up, Mark Whitney.
So I have people like George Carlin, Charles Schultz, and Jim Henson, people that you know. My shrine, my studio here is like a shrine to those people. Someone you should know is a guy named Justice Robert Jackson. Robert Jackson is the only Supreme Court justice who became a Supreme Court justice even though he only had a high school education. I identify with him because I've become very well schooled in the law and the Constitution just by studying it. Jackson was the lead prosecutor of the Nuremberg trial. People who you don't know, the unknown people, the people who inspire me, and is anybody who stands up alone in front of an audience with no notes, no net, no place to hide, and has the temerity to tell you what they believe. And I have no test for what they believe. I don't care what they believe. I'm just inspired by the fact when any single individual dares to stand up in front of an audience and just stand there and say what they believe. And if they can weave that into a great story, I am all ears. I will sit and listen to you all day long. That's really what inspires me, and that's one of the main reasons I'm running for president.
Thank you. Adam Kokesh.
Well, when you ask the question in such an open sense, who are your inspirations? I'm tempted to say people like Dick Cheney and George W. Bush are a big part of the inspiration for my activism, because I saw a lot of people die needlessly because of those two men. But obviously you're looking for something positive, right? Something that's motivating in an inspiring way, not just a negative way. And as has been pointed out, there's so many. You know, I could name so many activists, politicians, statesmen, comedians, whatever. But the thing that jumps to mind in what really I take inspiration from are stories like Tank Man, Tiananmen Square, the guy who just went out and stood in front of the tanks and said, you know what, I'm just going to put my body in the way of the machines, literally. And there's so many anonymous acts like that. I kind of like what Dan said about taking ideas and divorcing from the specifics or the personalities and saying, you know, I don't need to relate to that. I can take inspiration from every positive thing that I see. every act of defiance. You know, you can name all of these specific individuals, but it's really seeing that and building that into yourself. And I think, you know, if you look at my record of civil disobedience, of activism, I've been in a lot of situations where I've done things very publicly. I've been in a lot of situations where I've done things anonymously. And, you know, I've got so many stories that I would tell if I was bragging, but it's those stories that, you know, when we just contribute to the goodness of humanity, whether it's in defiance or in love or in charity, that motivate and inspire me, that I want to build into myself to being a better person.
Awesome. All right, we're going to start wrapping this up. There is another question from a Libertarian candidate, someone who ran in the past, Ryan Cooper. He asked, which LP presidential candidates will do the face mask challenge and help distribute face masks through Liberty Wings? So let's go ahead and hit the randomizer. And Adam, we're going to start with you. And just the backstory, the face mask challenge is to basically get as many face masks as possible into the hands of the public so we can shorten the length of not just coronavirus, but the flu season or pneumonia, right? So face mask challenge is just go out in public with a face mask.
Well, I did that for myself when we thought we were exposed at the Illinois Libertarian Convention, and we heard that Joshua Smith, one of our great chair candidates for the LNC, who I've endorsed, came down with a very funky flu the next week after that. And I was going out in this self-quarantine mode of either I'm going to avoid people entirely, or if I have to be around people, I'm going to wear a bandana because we didn't have access to masks, and I'm going to wear gloves, you know, if I'm even pumping gas or getting out. I think the bigger challenge here is how do we go forward as libertarians, support each other. If there's a way that libertarians are getting masks together, I'm all for it. I'll support it. If it empowers us to be more involved as political activists, to feel more comfortable talking to people in person, I'm all for it. Like I said, what I want to do, and I'd be willing to sponsor this myself or do some kind of fundraiser. And I would ask if the other candidates would support having the national convention in person, if we're able to get masks and gloves for everybody, fresh pair, you know, every day. And, you know, maybe have something I like, hashtag We Are Not Afraid, but, you know, maybe LP.org. Imagine everybody at the national convention wearing a mask that says LP.org on it. And maybe even some other, you know, message of defiance to say, yeah, you can tell us that this threat is there, but we're not going to be cowed by this. We're not going to act afraid. So whatever it takes for people to feel comfortable, if anything, in general, with the sort of germophobic response to the coronavirus, I'm all for it. The greater health consciousness of that, I've always considered myself a little bit of a, you know, practical germaphobe, careful about washing my hands when I'm shaking hands with other people. I never went to the full elbow, but, you know, forearm, not on the hands. I think it's great that consciousness is being raised. I think that's a good silver lining out of this crisis.
So I'm going to take that as a yes.
Yes.
Sam, Robb, you're up next.
Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit and say that I didn't get to answer the last question. So I'm going to really quickly say yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Would wear a mask. No, it's okay. I knew my turn would come around again. I'm going to say yes. I would absolutely wear a mask. I would encourage people to. I have no problem with donating or helping in order to make sure that the people who need them have masks and feel comfortable wearing them. And as for, you know, to answer the previous question, someone I admire, that would be a gentleman by the name of Richard Feynman. He's the discoverer of quantum chromodynamics. Fascinating character. If you have a chance to read about his history, he was very much interested in finding the truth and not really caring about what happened along the way. He was very focused on making sure that problems got solved. And one of the most entertaining things about him was that he was at Los Alamos on the Manhattan Project. And while he was there, he spent his time practicing cracking safes. So here he is in a government facility, one of the most tightly controlled, important government programs weapon development programs that's ever been done. And he goes into his commander's office and sits there and idly spins the dial and cracks the safe that holds all the secrets that they have been working on, and basically causes the entire building to go into lockdown. So I look at that and I think, you know what? That's who I want to be. I want to be someone who throws sand in the gears, who's interested in truth, and does whatever he needs in order to find it.
Thank you. And sorry for missing you on that question. I really apologize.
It happens. It happens.
Daniel Behrman, face mask challenge.
So yeah, I'm already wearing one when I go out. It's actually, so down here in Mexico, a lot of people are already doing that. A lot of people are voluntarily distancing without any orders from the government. So it's really amazing to see what's going on. But we have looked into buying bulk masks from China, of course, and of course, kind of polling, Americans to see, would you even wear them if they come from China? Because of course, that's where a lot of people are. That's where we think the virus comes from. So, so there's some issues with that, and a lot of people actually had a problem with this, not even really understanding that's where a lot of these masks are coming from anyway. Like if you get the 3M, all these American brands are coming from China anyway. But there's a couple other projects we're working on because one, like I'm very upset with the fact that these governors are coming in and they're saying, we command you to stay in your house if you're not an essential employee. So what I've done is actually I've created a hall pass on my website. You can go and download this and print it out, and it's the same letter that essential employees are coming that are going to work with. But it says you work for my campaign, and therefore you're an essential employee, and you have the right to travel now. There's also, we have it really good here in the U.S. because, as many people are close to the poverty line, we've been able to survive being shut down for several weeks. I have friends in Uganda who are literally living hand to mouth. They work the day, they get that money, they go buy food so they can eat that day. When they're out of a job for a week, they don't have that. The government has shut down all the markets and taken over the entire food distribution chain, which has made the prices of food skyrocket. But of course, nobody has jobs, so they can't afford it. They've also made it illegal to go door to door and deliver food to people. But my friends in Uganda, these libertarians in Uganda, have their own farm that they've been building for several months. And I'm helping them. We're actually sending out a fundraiser right now to raise money so they can build a fence around this and keep the wild animals out so they can continue to grow the food. And in civil disobedience, they are breaking the law and risking being arrested or even killed, delivering food to people who can't afford it. And I think that's really important. We need to understand that all of humanity is in this together. This is not an America problem. This is an international problem. And we all have to figure out how to get through it together. We all have different challenges facing different governments in different countries, but we really need to take that into consideration. This is our time as human beings to come together and push back against all of the governments of the world. And just as we're doing that in the United States, pushing back against our governments of each state, we have a bigger problem globally, and we need to work together to overcome this. And as we do that, we're going to produce more libertarians, more libertarian thinkers across the entire planet, which is going to help us get to where we're trying to go.
Thank you. Next up, face mask challenge. Mark Whitney.
Yeah, of course. In fact, my family was doing that before there was a face mask challenge. My youngest son is into retail arbitrage, so he was one of the first people to have a bunch of face masks from China, which kind of puts the lie to the idea that the future is local. The future is global. Throughout this conversation today, we've talked about how we do business with China. My son built an entire business, through free trade with China. On a personal note, I might say that my wife is doing a lot of shopping for neighbors who, both of who are elderly, but are home with small children. And I assume that that's going on all over the country. There are just a lot of people quietly engaged in acts of charity. On an individual note, I might add that my wife is planting arugula so that if the world comes to an end, we have something to eat, and I don't like arugula.
All right. So we're over time. So what I'm going to do is combine the last question with your closing statement, so you have 2 minutes. How will your campaign help the LPWA grow our candidate and activist base? And why should we choose you for our nominee? And let me go ahead and hit the randomizer. And we're going to start with you, Sam Robb.
Okay. How will I help LP Washington grow their candidate and activist base? First off, by providing someone who's an adult in the room. I think that's the whole point of this campaign as a libertarian, that we have such contrast with the two major party candidates, that we have the opportunity to show people that libertarians are the clear thinkers. Libertarians are the ones with a plan. Libertarians are the ones who are capable of taking this country and turning it around and changing our direction and driving us back towards freedom. Now, change is scary. We know that. We're going through that right now. So what we need to do is have a campaign that shows people that there are small incremental steps that will change the direction of this country, that they can get behind and that they can endorse. That's something that I've been promoting. That's something that I've been talking about. That's something that resonates and appeals to Democrats, Republicans, independents, and libertarians. As I believe Mark said earlier, I am very radical in terms of where I want to go. I want to see a country that is set free in my lifetime. I want to see minimum government, maximum freedom. But I also understand that we are nowhere near that right now. We have a long journey to go on, and each journey consists of a million little steps. We need to start making those steps instead of talking about the final destination. We need to start planning where we're going to go. That's a pragmatic, practical way to achieve a radical goal, which is freedom in our lifetime. That's why I'm asking for your support. That's why I hope that you will visit samrob2020.com, check out my platform, check out my proposals, and sign up for the newsletter and show me your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Next up, we have Adam Kokesh.
Thanks, Michael. It's a great question to end on. I think keeping the federal government going is a grossly impractical proposition that most Americans can see through. Localization being the everybody gets what they want strategy, getting power decentralized means we have a stronger network. We have a greater global community when people are able to come together cooperatively instead of by coercion. And the idea with localization of power being pushed down locally is so critical for our state affiliates and local candidates to get out of a sense of impotence that a lot of us feel in local activism, where you see, well, you can't fight City Hall. Well, you can fight City Hall when it's not being protected by the state government, by the federal government. When you have that government at your local level, accountable, transparent to you, something that you can fight and win, that makes you way more relevant as a state party, as a local candidate. Not just to say,
Oh, looks like Adam froze. So we'll go ahead and let him finish up if he's able to connect again. However, we'll go to our next speaker, Mark Whitney.
So the way I'm going to support people in Washington is the way I'm going to support people in every other state. And that is first with the most valuable commodity that I have, that any of us have, which is with my time. And second, with my money. I donated $200 to Brad Barron last night, who was running for Senate against Mitch McConnell, because I want to make sure he has the money to beat Mitch McConnell. But in terms of my time, if I am the nominee, I have pledged that my campaign schedule is going to be built around people who are the best candidates who are running for Congress, U.S. Senate, running for governor. I'm going to go out there and whip up the crowd, get people excited, and try to raise money. If the national convention is pushed off this year into summer or maybe canceled, I'm going to just keep running until November 3rd. I ended the first quarter with $100,000 in the bank. I'm the only candidate, to my knowledge, in this party who has run for president, who has announced their ending balance for the first quarter. Mine is six figures. That may be more than all the others. Lincoln Chafee is actually the rich guy in this race. He's worth $50 million. I have no idea what Lincoln is willing to do. I do know at the California convention that his party, he served warm Bud Light. So that does not bode well. So I want to get out there and build this party. I've committed the next 10 years of my life to doing it. If at the end of the next 10 years, I can look back and say I played a significant role in making this party politically relevant, instead of talking about nonsense like dissolving the United States of America, which is just ridiculous. Nobody wants to do that. And it is actually an insult to people like Larry Sharp, Brad Barron in the Senate, and any of you there in Washington who are running for city council, running for Congress, running for U.S. Senate. You're running, if you're doing that, you're running on these two platforms. If I take this platform away, this platform, you may as well do this. It's nothing. This platform is nothing without this platform. So I will not use this platform to destroy this platform. I will not do that. And I will be there to support you and make this party politically relevant. I literally know of nobody outside the Libertarian Party who wishes for anarchy. And voluntarist, by the way, is just a nice word, a politically correct word for anarchy. I oppose anarchy.
Daniel, taxationist Seth Behrman.
So I've always kind of had a disagreement with some of the Libertarian parties as far as what they want in terms of growing the party. You know, a lot of us want to see the party succeed, and they think that that means, okay, if we have 1 billion members and they're all donating, we're going to have candidates, we're going to have all these voters, and that's what's going to work. The problem is we're trying to put the cart before the horse. We're trying to get people to join this party. And we haven't sold them on the product yet. The product itself is liberty. And there's actually a very large liberty market outside of this party. The Libertarian Party is only one company within an entire industry that's selling liberty. You have all these other tracks of liberty organizations that are selling this, and a lot of them are non-political. We're selling an idea, we're selling a product, and we have to sell that product better than anybody else. That means that we need to understand not everybody wants freedom. If you tell people, hey, we're giving you freedom, they're like, well, what do I care about that? I need to pay my rent. What do I care about that? I'm worried about healthcare. And this is why you have, you know, the Bernie Sanders people who are supporting his healthcare plan, because yeah, they want to be free. They don't want to be slaves, but that's not their immediate problem. So if we really want to grow the party, we need to stop focusing on numbers like membership and everything else. What we need to do is we really need to focus on tuning our message into what's going to get everybody excited about this idea about liberty. And I hope that what I'm doing with my campaign is to set an example of that. Like I said earlier, we've got people from the Bernie Sanders campaigns, the Andrew Yang campaigns, the Donald Trump campaigns, because we're really good at messaging. We're really good at selling this product, this idea of liberty. And that's how we grow the consumers of the product. And that's how we set ourselves as the industry standard, the best producer of this product that we're selling, so that everybody comes to us. Everybody knows if you really like this idea of liberty and what it's going to give you, the Libertarian Party is the place to go. Those are the people you want to help, because those are the people who are politically engaged, and those are the people who are actually going to make it happen. And we also need to consider this. Most people who vote Democrat, there are tens of millions of them. And people who vote Republican, tens of millions of them. They're not all members of the party. They're not dues-paying members. They don't all donate to candidates. It seems like it sometimes because they have so much money to work with, but that's just because they have sold their product to so many millions of people. We don't need to get everybody who supports the Libertarian Party to become a member. We don't need to get them to endorse certain candidates. We need them to understand what our product is. They need to support us. We do need them to donate. We do want them to join the party, but that is not our main goal. Our main goal is to get them to understand what we're selling and why it's good from then. Everything else is just going to come with that. Once they're buying our product, they're going to say, what can I do so that more people will buy this product? I want more people on the same network as me. I want more people I want everybody else to have the same product that I bought, so that we can all be part of a big club. That's going to follow. But the main focus right now is selling people on liberty. And that's what I hope to set an example with my campaign.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all of our candidates for joining us in the Libertarian Party of Washington State Community Group. It was a private forum and a private conversation for libertarians in Washington, and I wish all of you the very best with your campaigns. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks for having us, sir.
Thanks for putting this together.
Keep banging.